Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk Off the Podium. I have a fellow podcaster and a fellow conductor, Jeremy Cuebas. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tigran. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for having me on your podcast. It was fun, and I'm excited to do this with you. And it's great to see another conductor podcaster. And I know I said it on your show, but I really enjoy your podcast. I've been listening to episodes, various episodes over time, and you've had some amazing guests. We'll get to the conducting, but I want to hear a little bit about what inspired you to start the podcast. Why the podcast? Just a little bit about it.
I had been listening. I'd been listening to podcasts for a long time, and I kind of got into that like whole entrepreneurial, I want to be a business owner, and I was like, well, a podcast is like a low entry, I can do that, and also it's a really great excuse for me to kind of get free workshops. So I was like, I'm running out of money, I'm running out of time, I want to talk to conductors, I want to expand my network, I want to learn from a whole bunch of different teachers, and I kind of wanted to start like a mini business. So I was like, the podcast is the perfect thing, let's start it. Luke and I were hanging out every week talking about conducting, and then about a year and a half later we finally figured out a name for it, and that was our own like, okay, now we're allowed to start the podcast. We couldn't start it before because we didn't have a name. So we were at a workshop, and I was, for like 2 years I'd been like, damn it, what are we going to call this thing? What are we going to call this? We can't start doing anything until we have a name. And then I was sitting in a lecture at a workshop, and I was just like, oh my God, Podium Time, of course. So I wrote it down, and I literally passed him a note. And I was like, the podcast is called Podium Time. And we were like, okay, now we can
That's awesome.
Now we can start it. And then I reached out to a couple people, I'm starting this podcast. And JoAnn Falletta was the first person I reached out to, and my master's teacher was her assistant for a number of years, so I was able to just get her email, and she was so helpful and so responded so quickly. She's very good at responding by email, and we interviewed JoAnn, and then about 6 months later I finally sat down and put everything together. So it was about a 3-year process just to get it started.
Wow.
And we've been going for about just over 3 years now, so it's been a 6-year process in total. But yeah, I wanted to expand my network, and I wanted to start learning from basically every teacher that I could, just adding all those lessons together and seeing what comes out on the other side. And then apparently people listen to it as well, but I hope people enjoy it. But I always admit that it's very much a selfish venture for myself.
And with your approach, especially the interviews I've listened to, it's I think it's something that will be there for a long time, because some podcasts are great in the moment. Maybe none from the musical ones that I've listened to, but many other podcasts, they talk about current issues and current things. And of course, you could revisit those and listen to those, but I have a feeling many people might not go back to listen to those. But your podcast and many other musical podcasts, I'm sure, they will be there for a long time. And if someone wants to do something about JoAnn Falletta or any of the other guests you've had, they're going to go back to your podcast, listen to it, and try to get some information, quotes, or other things from the podcast, because those are important things. And some of the important figures in music, you listen to those, you wish they did more interviews, they talked more, they said more, so you could really get their perspective on things. So I think it's fantastic to do it, and I know people appreciate it, and I know more people will listen to it in the future as well.
I'm glad you appreciate that, because I do that on purpose. We don't avoid current events unless the guest really wants to talk about it. But we try to make everything evergreen. I had somebody recently say that if you go through the archives, I think this morning as we're recording this, we had episode 88 come out. And a friend of mine said, this is a master's degree in conducting in a podcast. Just go listen from the beginning to end. And again, that was really my intention, was to just what do I need, what do I want help with, and I think about what may be interesting for our listeners, but I find that we get the best if I'm like, okay, I'm really having trouble with this, let me ask the guest what the specific answer may be, and then I hope that other people find that helpful. So it's kind of by design a very much I guess, master's degree in a in a podcast form.
That's awesome. A little bit about the orchestras that you work with, and I know, it's a tough time now, but I just want to know what your orchestras are doing now and what the plans are, if any.
Yeah, so my day job is I work in one of the managers in the box office of the Colorado Symphony, which is a full-time orchestra in Denver. So that's my 9 to 5. I go to rehearsals also, so that one has plenty of benefits. I get concerts when we're playing and rehearsals. And then as a conductor, I've got a couple private students. I'm assistant conductor for a regional orchestra in Fort Collins, the Fort Collins Symphony. So that's a per-service, fully professional orchestra. And then if the pandemic had not happened, I would be starting an assistant conductorship with a local community orchestra here in Colorado as well. So those are my two conducting positions.
Any recent projects in conducting specifically that you really, I think I read a couple of projects, that's why I'm asking this, but any projects in the recent years that really, were kind of important projects for you to either conduct or, take on or put together specific to conducting?
Yeah, I haven't done too many projects myself. I had a couple small guest conducting things going on, again, that got canceled. I was going to have my first true guest conducting as a conductor and my first as a violin soloist on the same concert in April, but that didn't pan out. Other than that, not too much. I kept pretty busy in my master's conducting just about everything I could, and there are so many orchestras here in Colorado around Denver. Every 5 miles there's another orchestra, so every time I try to start something it kind of fizzles out just because there's so much, not competition, but there's just no demand for a new orchestra here.
Yeah. So you mentioned violin. I was going to ask what your instrument is, and you're a violinist.
I'm a violinist, yes.
So what violin to conducting, how'd that happen?
It's a story I've shared on the podcast once or twice, but I like to share it because I hope that somebody finds some inspiration in it. I was a composition student for a long time because the violin wasn't really working for me. I was like, I'm not good at violin. I want to do music, so I'll compose because I can do that, whatever. So I started composition, and I started a degree in composition. And about halfway through that degree, I accidentally went to an all-collegiate orchestra, kind of like Missouri. I'm from Missouri, so it was like Missouri Music Educators Association, and they had a collegiate orchestra, kind of like the All-State. And I was there, and the teacher was Erin Freeman from Virginia, and she was conducting us that week, and that week was kind of the first time that I had ever kind of realized what creating music was. Like in high school and even for most of college, orchestra was kind of just like, let's get the notes down, let's make sure this is going to happen by the time the concert comes around. But this rehearsal, this series of rehearsals for this concert, was the first time that I was playing with like an advanced orchestra where everybody had the music ahead of time, everybody had their parts ready. So we got to spend 3 days like just working on musicality and making this absolutely beautiful. And so like Erin's energy and what she was adding to the music and my first experience with this, like everything kind of came together. And it was one of those moments where like in just a snap, I knew that I wanted to be a conductor because I finally saw what professional music and like really incredible music making could be.
Wow.
So I went out to the stalls and I got all the conducting books I could, and I went to my conducting teacher and I said, okay, I think I was a sophomore, and I was like, okay, I'm taking the conducting class. Should I take this one? Should I take this one? And so I signed up for all the classes, and I just did everything I could right away. I finished my composition degree, and I started doing everything I could with conducting and taking workshops. Like it really was just crossing the mountain, and then suddenly I was in a totally different land where I knew what I wanted to do with my life, and it was all because this great musicians and Erin's like leadership and her enthusiasm for this music just kind of clicked that spark in me. And I haven't looked back. I think that was was probably 2012. So it's been 8 years now, and it's still going strong. So
Have you had Erin on your podcast?
I have had, yeah, we had her on about I think a year and a half ago. I mean, she's still great.
Yeah. I knew about your composing because I came when I knew we were going to do this. I did some searching, and I realized you were a composer as well. And I came across, I think it was called the Chamber Symphony.
Yeah, so I wrote that so I would have something to conduct on my on my senior recital. I would love to get it performed again. The recording didn't go very well, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And you know, getting 15 people together didn't really work in school, or that performance. Even our dress rehearsal, we didn't have everyone together, so the performance that we recorded was the dress rehearsal, and I would have loved one more rehearsal with.
Any piece that you would love to conduct you have never conducted?
Oh, so many. The first time when I started conducting, the Springfield Symphony, I started going to all the rehearsals, and I kind of became their apprentice assistant. And they were doing Mahler 2, so that was a very early piece that I studied as a conductor. Of course, I didn't get to conduct it, but I remember that was only a couple months after I kind of figured out that I wanted to be a conductor, and I remember very clearly during that concert and during those rehearsals saying, like, the only goal I have in life is to conduct Mahler's Second Symphony before I die. If I can do that, I'll be great. And we were supposed to do it in May, so I was assisting it, conducting the offstage brass. So if the virus wouldn't have happened, I would have gotten a little taste of that. Yeah. Maybe if our conductor had gotten sick, I would have gotten the whole taste of it way too early for me. But the first thing that comes to mind is Mahler 2, just because that was like so early in my quest of becoming a conductor. I don't really look forward to pieces that I want to conduct because I'm not programming anything for myself. I'm still kind of following whatever I'm assisting, and so I just do my best to, you know, love and study every piece as if I'm going to conduct it, and just take whatever's in front of me and make the absolute most of it.
Any composing recently? Are you composing, or are you playing the violin at all?
I sure had the intention of composing, but that never happened. And I still teach violin. Again, I was preparing a concerto for that concert in April, but I haven't. I dropped that since I wasn't playing the concert anymore. I was like, no, I've been playing a lot more piano now. But my main focus has really been actually working on my score study as a skill, like not just studying the scores, but improving how I learn scores. Yeah. And working with a couple teachers specifically on building those skills and becoming better and faster and deeper at score study. Yeah.
So who are some of your mentors, maybe some of the mentors you're currently working with, and people who inspired you in the past?
Yeah, my undergrad teacher, Chris Keltz, I did my last year with him. He came in my last year of my undergrad. He was a big part of, you know, he helped me get into my master's program, and he had been a mentor of mine since high school. He taught at one of the string camps I went to. He was kind of the first person to teach me how to score study. Then my master's teacher, Wes Kenny, I still assist for him, so I'm still very close with Wes. We see each other every couple months, and you know, from him I learned a lot more of the professional world. I was his assistant at the school. I'm his assistant at the Fort Collins Symphony. So he really taught me, like, preparing music to a professional level, which I'd never had before, and I was lucky to get that in my master's. Seeing him conducting the school and a youth orchestra and the professional symphony. Recently, I just finished the Make Beautiful Music class that Mark Anthacker is teaching through BCO. Normally they have their summer and their winter conducting workshops, but he's teaching an online class, and that was kind of revolutionary for me. In you know, just understanding music. He has such a unique and really powerful way of understanding energy in music and the flow of music, and I just finished the 12-week class, and I learned so much from that. So he's the other teacher I've been working with a lot recently, and then I have a couple others that I talk with recently. But I consider everybody we've had on Podium Time to be a mentor of mine, because I absolutely have learned from every single episode we've done.
That's amazing. I do want to ask you about a recent thing that you did, and a little bit about that, which was your involvement with the International Conducting Workshop. A little bit about that, what you've done for them as a staff faculty member.
Yeah, so the International Conducting Workshop and Festival, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I last May I did a workshop with Don Schleicher here in Boulder, and I know the guys who run the workshop, so I said, hey, if I help with some stuff, can I have a discount? So they gave me a discount, and I ran the camera work, and while I was there, I did a Podium Time episode, so I was able to present myself to Don as both a good conductor and a good student, and as somebody who could do video and audio work. So then a couple weeks later, I got an email from Don and Ben, who runs ICWF, inviting me to come be an assistant and an auditor to his workshop in Bulgaria. So last August, I went out and I spent 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, 2 awesome weeks in Bulgaria with Don Schleicher and Larry Ratcliffe. I got to observe them the whole time. I got to produce a bunch of content for their YouTube page, putting down videos and interviewing. I did a Podium Time episode about it. And just being around Don and Larry, I wasn't directly conducting, but just being around them for 2 weeks was, again, such an incredible learning opportunity. And their 2 episodes are still our top Podium Time episodes, actually.
Oh, wow.
They weren't interviews, but 2 episodes I recorded of lectures they gave are our 2 top episodes. Don Schleicher's Keys to a Successful Rehearsal, and then Larry Ratcliffe's walkthrough of Petrushka.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was an incredible opportunity to go spend 2 weeks in Bulgaria, where the food is incredible. Oh my God, I loved it. It was so great, and the Kit Kats are delicious. I love the candy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to go to Bulgaria. I've never been. My grandmother on my mom's side was born in Sofia, Bulgaria.
Yeah.
She's not Bulgarian, she's Armenian. After the genocide, her family ended up there, and she was born there, and then later moved to, at the time, Soviet Armenia. So that's my connection to Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And there are lots of Armenians there, so that's another connection. A couple of things, going back to the podcasting, your podcasting career from conducting, is what you wish you knew before you started the podcasting. And I know it took you a while to come up with a name and all this stuff, but what do you wish you knew about podcasting and that whole process before you got started?
Oh, so much. I didn't have any experience before we started. Again, I just wanted to start something, and that was something that I thought I could start, and that would also help me in the future. I think there are a lot of small organizational things that I could go through, a lot of small technical things, but the biggest thing is just, I wish I had been a little bit more organized from the beginning. Now I take pretty good notes when we record our interviews. I take timestamps. I pull out sections that are really good, and we've been trying to figure out what to do for our 100th episode, and I would love to do like one of those top hits episodes. I would have to go back and like listen through every single episode we've done and pull out time things. So I think just organizationally, I wish from the beginning that I had been taking better notes and taking better quotes and stuff. I mean, I've learned how to interview a lot better. I've learned how to communicate a lot better. But if I had to pick one thing, it's probably just that I wish I had been more organized from the beginning.
Yeah. And you asked me a question about my, episodes I would recommend when I was on your show. Well, you're on my show now, so please tell me a couple of episodes that really, inspired you, meant a lot to you. What are some episodes from what you've done?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. Do you mind if I say one swear word? Is that okay? I don't remember.
Oh, go for it.
So, probably our most impactful and our most popular episode that I actually interviewed is Kick-Ass Score Study with Kevin No. And I've worked with Kevin No a couple times afterwards. If you or your audience have not have not worked with Kevin, no. He's I believe he's teaching at UMKC now in Kansas City, and
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I thought he was in Michigan. Was he in
Yeah,
Michigan?
he was, yeah, and
Oh, wow. Okay.
he's taken over at UMKC now, and Kick-Ass Score Study is exactly what he does. I did a symposium with him and some of his symposium students. I kept begging him, like, hey, can I come to some of your lectures that you're doing over Zoom? And he finally he invited me to one, and I went, and I just learned so much because he's got such a cool way of digging into the score and asking all these tiny questions. So definitely Kick-Ass Score Study with Kevin No. Another one that was really paradigm shifting for me, and how I thought about being a conductor, was our interview with Tito Muñoz. He's the music director of the Phoenix Symphony, and so I believe that one's called, I can't remember what it's called, something about technique, but basically he was saying that there are three levels, the hierarchy of the three things that are important for a conductor to have. The first one is musicianship or leadership. The first two are musicianship and leadership, and the third one, way down at the bottom, is technique. Tito was a violinist, a very accomplished violinist, incredible musician who started conducting a little late, and so from him I got that perspective of somebody who was an immaculate musician who later became a conductor, and I think that just makes him all the better a conductor. So one of the things I really loved in that episode also was that he said if he were ever auditioning somebody, if he were ever teaching, his audition would not be a conducting audition, because you can teach technique, you can teach conducting. It would be like, here's a string quartet, coach them for an hour and make them sound better at the end. Like just 100% music and leadership.
Wow.
So that one just blew my mind, and it was like, I don't remember when we recorded it. It was a while ago, but I still talk about it. So that one, that's definitely one of my absolute favorite episodes we've done. Very recently we talked with Teddy Abrams, and that was one where we talked about COVID-19, but we talked about so much more than that. Mostly we were talking about the future of orchestras and how to like really make a difference in your community. So that one was very much about the leadership aspect and the impact that you can make. I think it was a really dense episode because he is just such a good talker, and he's got everything figured out. He knows exactly what he's doing, it sounds like. So he was very clear, very concise, and I pulled so many quotes out of that one that I can save for later, and I can put up. But that's a really good one for like being leadership in your community. If I had to pick three, those are definitely my top three. Those are the three that jump out as like really life-changing interviews that we've done.
Well, I love asking the question of a life-changing moment, and it seems like you answered it, unless there's something else, maybe a personal life-changing moment, or you know, if you think of a professional life-changing moment, any that come to mind?
I mean, I would say that the moment that I decided to become a conductor was a life-changing moment. I kind of had a similar moment when I decided I wanted to be a classical musician. It was very much a door was opened. More recently, I've had a change of perception about myself as a professional that I think is very important, and that's I realized recently that I've been out of school for 2 years, and I still have this perception of myself as I'm a student first and a conductor second. Like I'm still a kid. I'm not quite an adult yet. I'm 27 now. I'm an adult, but I still have this perception as me, like the student kid. And I realized that I've been letting myself not be as prepared as I could be, because I have this, like, oh, I'm still it's okay if I'm still a student. It's okay if I'm not prepared. So in just the past couple of weeks, I've had this. I was talking to my girlfriend about, I don't remember what we were talking about, it doesn't matter, but I had this realization that, like, no, I'm a conductor. I'm a lifelong student, but I'm not a student anymore. I'm a conductor. So that's been a very, very important change in the way I see myself and how I prepare. I mean, even coming to this interview, I wasn't sitting... Before, I would sit down as like, oh, it's okay if I'm a minute late, whatever, I'm just a student. But now, I came into this in the mindset of I'm a professional podcaster.
Yeah.
This is my job right now. This is this is part of who I am as a professional. So that's been a really big change that's happened in the past couple weeks, and it was kind of gradual, and again, just a perception switch of how I see myself as a professional, as a musician. Always learning. I'm not saying I'm stopping learning,
Yeah.
but I'm a conductor first, who is always learning. But I'm a professional conductor.
You mentioned the masters. So many people that I know go on after masters to do a doctorate. Your thoughts on a doctoral degree in conducting, and if you ever even thought about doing a doctorate?
Oh, I sure started my master's wanting to do a doctorate, and then about halfway through my master's, I kind of, I started to get the sense that if I went and do a doctorate, and I still flip back and forth whether I'd like to teach. I think I'd definitely like to teach at some point, but a doctorate's not right for me right now. And as I continue to learn, as I continue to become a better musician, as I continue to learn how to score study, every day I wake up and do a little bit more score study and realize how little I knew a couple years ago. I wish I could go do my master's again, knowing what I know now. So I'm not saying I'm not going to do a doctorate, but I'm not rushing into it. It's something that's on the back burner, and I may or may not. But I know that right now is not the right time for me to study further. I definitely like to, but
we talked about a couple of podcasts that have to do with music. What other podcasts do you know of, or what other podcasts do you listen to specific to music? And it doesn't have to be classical music, anything that you listen to or you know of.
For music podcasts?
Yeah.
Okay. Josh Weilerstein's Sticky Notes is great. It's basically program notes. I really like Song Exploder by Rishikesh Hirway. It's basically he takes, and that's not classical at all. He takes a pop song, and it's about 15 minutes of somebody from the band dissecting how they wrote it. So that's a fascinating one. And then they play the song at the end. So even I was listening to, I can't remember the specific episode right now. Anyway, but that one's really cool because I love all music. And I love when people break down things and talk about the lyrics and talk about the origins of the sound and what they do in the studio. It was Closing Time. That Closing Time, da-na-na, that song. I listened to that episode, and just simple things like in the bridge, they used electronic drums instead of regular drums. And then once you listen to that and know that, you realize that it's a totally different sound, but you wouldn't notice it. So I love to dig into those, and how he also explained that in Closing Time, every line has a double meaning. It's like there's a literal and a figurative meaning about something in his personal life. So, Sticky Notes with Joshua Weilerstein, Song Exploder. Your podcast, of course. I listen to regularly. I'm a podcast junkie. I don't listen to that many music podcasts, actually.
Okay.
Oh, the Everything Conducting podcast.
Okay.
Upbeat. It's new, and we're planning to have them on pretty soon. But they're a bunch of professional conductors who are doing some conductor specific things, and what they've put out recently has been like really high quality. I was really surprised how high quality it was for their first episode.
Wow.
So they're doing a great job. I think it's called the Upbeat Podcast from everythingconducting.com. But yeah, they're doing an awesome job, and we're definitely gonna have those guys on Podium Time pretty soon.
Again, specific to the podcast, why did you recently decide to kind of split up the episodes?
It was an experiment I was running. I've stopped doing it now because it was just so much work. We got some feedback that people wanted shorter episodes. We got some feedback that people wanted more focused episodes. And so after doing that for a couple, and after talking to a couple listeners directly, what I decided was to still put out the full hour episodes, but to put in time codes and make it very clear what we were talking about when. Because I know, especially right now when I'm not driving, I'm listening to a lot fewer podcasts. So the intention was to make things more focused and make things a little easier to digest in one listen. Another issue is that during COVID, I think just downloads has dropped so much that I don't quite have enough data to see if it was to see if it was successful enough. So it was so much more work for me, and I only had one positive comment back about it that I decided to stop doing it. But it was a little experiment that I'm glad we did.
You mentioned the non-classical music. What bands, what artists do you listen to that's not classical music?
I was a metalhead in high school. Before I started classical music, I at 3 different times was the guitarist, the drummer, and the screamer for metal bands. So that's if you want a fun fact that most of my current friends and colleagues don't know about me, is that I used to scream in a Christian metal band called Tempest of Hail.
Wow.
That didn't last very long, and we have a recording somewhere. I'd love to find it. But right now I'm listening to a lot of John Bellion. My girlfriend and I really like him, and I think Billie Eilish is putting out some really good, surprisingly good music. I didn't like it the first time, but then I listened to it in headphones, and it's quite good, I think. And classics. I wouldn't call myself a Radiohead fan, but I like Radiohead and 80s music. Just about everything. If it comes on, I'll like it.
So we got that out of the way. The hobbies, anything that you do that, just to kind of get away from music?
Well, between music and the podcast, there's not so much time. My girlfriend and I love horror movies. We just subscribe to Shudder, which is like Netflix, but just for horror movies. And there's some incredible stuff on there. I think they have like 130 original movies, and a lot of them are okay, but some of them are really good. So we watch a lot of movies, and I actually track every movie that we watch. So last year we watched 103 movies in 2019, and I don't know the numbers for this year, but at the end of every year we'll go through our list of movies and we'll talk about our favorites, and we put it together. So movies, and especially horror movies. So it's horror movie season right now, which is our favorite time of the year, September and October. I read a lot. I like books more than I have time to read, so I have a bookshelf of books that I haven't gotten to yet. Mostly I love self-development books, like self-development and business books, and I just finished reading a big, difficult novel that it was a hurdle. It's called Anathema. It's a novel by Neil Stevenson. Very difficult, but very much worth it. So I'm reading that again now. But I like reading, like horror movies, like walking, that kind of stuff.
Advice to young musicians.
Advice to young musicians.
Well, you're a young musician, but
I'm a young musician.
Still,
but I'm not. I'm a professional now. And that's part of it. I'm not a young musician. I need to think of myself as a professional. Advice to young musicians: if I can split it up, if I think. Well, no, I don't want to split up. I think my advice to young musicians is figure out how you work best. Mm-hmm. Everybody works best. Another secret little hobby of mine is I really like personality quizzes. Not all of them, but I really like the Enneagram, which I think is one of the most consistently accurate ones. And then the Strengths Finder from Clifton Strengths really actually helped me. There was a weird time in my life that I was trying to get through some stuff, and getting my Strengths Finder results helped me kind of come to terms with a couple weird things that were going on in my brain. So I think understanding how you work and then doing your best. I learn best in a very I take a list of I keep a list of all the movies I watch. I have a very structured score study routine. I wish I had been more organized in putting the podcast together. Organization's very important for me in my learning, but for some people it's not. So I would say learn about yourself and experiment and see what works best for you. Because some people can study and learn really well with just a little bit. Some people need more structure. But I would say learn as much as you can. And do so many experiments, because your life is easy. Make life easy. make life easy. Figure out where your weak spots are and where your strengths are, and then everybody's got their own forward. And then find teachers that work with that.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to add before we end?
I don't think so.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for your time, and thanks for having me on, Tigran.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Off the Podium. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode.